Hello everybody, and welcome to the TEC TV's coverage of Defender Challenge 2003, where the Air National Guard Security Forces will take on teams from the United States Air Force, Great Britain, and Department of Energy. I'm Master Sergeant Tim Coombs.
And I'm Master Sergeant Terry Cripps, coming to you from the Air National Guard Training and Education Center here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Defender Challenge is an annual competition held in San Antonio, Texas. It will test the mettle of each 10-member Security Forces team. The skills these teams will demonstrate include marksmanship, tactics and maneuvering, leadership, and planning.
That's right, Terry. Each of the three events in Defender Challenge has been carefully designed to create realistic wartime scenarios. This is not just good training for these Security Forces teams. The Air Force Protection Battle Lab will collect data on the performance of each squad. This data will help the Air Force to evaluate how a 10-member squad compares to the current 13-person configuration. Some exciting stuff here, Terry.
Indeed, world-class competition among world-class competitors. Each Security Forces component has handpicked their team members to compete in Defender Challenge. The members of this year's Air National Guard team come from all over the country and represent the best of the best in Security Forces. Now let's meet the 2003 Air National Guard Defender Challenge team.
And now, from the 108th Security Forces Squadron out of McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey, this year's team leader, Master Sergeant Michael Rukakis. Sergeant Rukakis is a two-time veteran of Defender Challenge competition. Last year, he led the Air Force's Air Mobility Command team. He carries the M4 rifle, a smaller and lighter version of the M16.
Next up, the leader of Alpha Team, Technical Sergeant Robert Sutton. Robert Sutton is from the 127th Security Forces Squadron out of Selfridge Air National Guard Base in Michigan.
Alpha Team's automatic rifleman is Senior Airman Robert Collins. Airman Collins is from the 178th Security Forces Squadron in Springfield, Ohio. He carries the M249 Squad Automatic Weapon, commonly known as the SAW.
Alpha Team's Grenadier is Staff Sergeant Joseph Mays. Sergeant Mays hails from the 121st Security Forces Squadron out of Rickenbacker Air National Guard Base in Columbus, Ohio. He carries the M4 rifle with an M203 grenade launcher mounted underneath.
Next up, Bravo Team Leader, Technical Sergeant Andy Peck. Sergeant Peck is from the 115th Security Forces Squadron in Madison, Wisconsin. He's a returning competitor as well and was on the 2000 team.
Bravo Team's automatic rifleman is Senior Airman Daniel Wilson. Airman Wilson is from the 178th Security Forces Squadron out of Springfield, Ohio.
Bravo Team's Grenadier is Staff Sergeant Jason Studi. Sergeant Studi was on the 98 and 99 Air Education and Training Command teams. He's from the 115th Security Forces Squadron in Madison, Wisconsin.
The leader of Charlie Team is Staff Sergeant Charles Kane. Sergeant Kane hails from the 127th Security Forces Squadron out of Selfridge Air National Guard Base in Michigan.
Charlie's team machine gunner is Technical Sergeant Dennis Callan. Sergeant Callan is from the 108th Security Forces Squadron at McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey. He's got the M240B machine gun, which adds an extra 25 pounds to what he has to carry.
Charlie Team's Grenadier is Staff Sergeant James McIsaac. Sergeant McIsaac hails from the 126th Security Forces Squadron out of Scott Air Force Base in Illinois.
And last but not least, Senior Master Sergeant Alan Parks. Sergeant Parks is from the 127th Security Forces Squadron at Selfridge Air National Guard Base, Michigan. He's the alternate team member, which means he has to be ready to replace any member of the team at a moment's notice. You know, Terry, that's quite a lineup. The Air National Guard team looks hard to beat, but you know, all the teams have one thing in common. They only have 1 month to train together before competition.
That's right, Tim. Any team caught training together before 15 September would be immediately disqualified from competition. It may sound like a dicey proposition, but these guys are trained to pull it all together at the last minute and think on their feet. Master Sergeant Buck Kaler caught up with the team during their training at McCord Air Force Base in Washington.
In the shadow of majestic Mount Rainier, on a weapons firing range, the sound of gunfire. Well, almost. Under the watchful eye of Master Sergeant Russ Callahan, the Air National Guard Defender Challenge team works to perfect its aiming technique.
What we do is we put a dime or a washer on top of the receiver, and we told all the individuals that they had to squeeze the trigger 6 times and keep the coin on top of the gun without it falling off.
Drills like these condition the team members into what is known as muscle memory. when hand-eye coordination becomes an automatic response. With only 3 weeks left to train for competition, the team hones its marksmanship skills, and they spend much of their precious training time at the range. To prepare the team for the combat handgun competition, Sergeant Callahan sets up a series of targets to simulate what they might face in Texas.
We're having to improvise. We do not know the actual course of fire that will be for the competition. We're assuming that there's going to be various stages, both for individual and for the team. So we're trying to prepare the team as a whole for this and each individual. We're focusing not only on accuracy but speed.
The team also tests its speed at the obstacle course. Carrying their weapons over and through each obstacle, they prepare for the grueling 1.5-mile endurance event. But there's a problem. One of the team members hasn't made it to the finish line. Suffering from painful shin splints, he falls behind the rest of the team. Realizing they're missing someone, the team races back to help their injured comrade, who finally crosses the finish line. Team leader Mike Rakakis is frustrated.
But I did say when you get about 100 meters, 200 meters out, to stop and wait for the team. I didn't see anybody do that. Everybody just ran to the finish. 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2.
Mistakes like this could cost them the competition, but in combat, the outcome could be much worse.
You're only going to be fast as your slowest man. It's that whole team concept, and that's what the Warrior Challenge is. You know, your time does not finish until that last person crosses that finish line. So, you know, a goal of ours is to have these guys working as a team going through that course. You're carrying heavy weapons through that course. Guys are going to need help. That's what your team members are for. They're there to help you out.
Beginning before sunrise, the team trains more than 10 hours a day. Today, they get ready for the Field Tactics event. Practicing their techniques against unseen enemies, the team prepares for both competition and combat. The tactics course is followed by rigorous physical fitness training, where team members often push themselves beyond the limit. After this 3-mile run, the punishing training takes its toll, and one member of the team has to quit.
Every member of the team's been pushing themselves pretty hard now for approximately 10 days. And one of our individuals has a stress fracture of his leg and is not going to be able to compete. He's down for approximately 3 months.
Despite the morale-crushing setback of losing one of its own, the Air Guard team remains confident they will prevail in San Antonio.
These guys are coming together as a team, and we hope by the 3rd week we put everything together and then get to the competition and win gold.
We're going to win, pure and simple. I think this is an excellent team. The skills were already there, we're just refining them.
Refined skills that will hopefully bring Defender Challenge Gold to this Air National Guard team. Master Sergeant Buck Kaler, TEC-TV Sports.
Thanks, Buck. Obviously an elite group of individuals selected for the Air Guard's Defender Challenge team. Some setbacks there as well, losing one of their team members.
Definitely, Tim. Since this report was filed, they lost another member to a fractured knee. So you know they're training hard for this competition. But you're a marathon runner. You think these guys might be training a little too hard for this event?
That's a possibility for sure. A lot of these events are intense and will test the endurance of each competitor. It's possible to overtrain for endurance competition, and injuries are pretty common. Unfortunately, these injuries were severe enough to take a few members out of the competition, but their replacements are well qualified and should do well in Defender Challenge.
Should be an exciting competition. When we return, we go to Camp Bullis, outside San Antonio, Texas, as we kick off Defender Challenge 2003. Don't go away.
When disaster strikes, who will be there to help? Who will deliver food, clothing, medical supplies? Who will rescue the stranded in communities just like yours? You will, as a member of the Air National Guard. Feel the pride, get the experience. Join the Air National Guard and fuel your future.
We're back with the TEC TV sports coverage of Defender Challenge 2003. The Air National Guard team has spent a month training together in Washington State. Now they're ready for the real thing.
Now it is time to get this thing started. Our first event, Warrior Challenge. The objectives of this event are to measure each team's strength, endurance, teamwork, and problem-solving skills. The teams will move quickly through a 1.5-mile obstacle course. All their equipment must make it to the end of the course, and there are penalties if any piece of equipment is left behind.
As they make their way through the obstacle course, the team will have to complete 3 core tasks, testing each team member on common security forces skills. The first task will test basic self-aid and buddy care. Medical personnel will be on site to evaluate the team's performance.
The next task will evaluate the team's proficiency in land navigation using the Global Positioning System and the Precision Lightweight Ground Receiver. And the last task in this event will test the team's knowledge of nuclear, biological, and chemical protection.
After completing all 3 task stations, the squad leader will assemble the team at the departure point, where they'll put on their protective mask and run, if they can, to the Warrior Challenge finish line. But they're still not done. After they cross the finish line, the team will immediately proceed to phase 1 of the handgun competition, where they'll receive points for speed of completion.
I can only imagine how hard it'll be for these guys to keep a steady bead on the target after running all that way. This should be very exciting. So let's go to San Antonio, where the Air National Guard team is ready for the Warrior Challenge event.
There's the team on the starting line, ready for this 1.5-mile gauntlet of pain.
Remember, pace yourself.
And they're off.
Coming up on the log balance obstacle, you can see the log's a little damp and slippery with moss. But these are a lot lower than the ones the teams trained on in Washington.
Yeah, those logs are at least 6 feet off the ground. This obstacle should be no problem for these guys. Moving on to the Tarzan now. Here's Collins making his way across the bars. Looks like the bars are wet. Hard to hold on out there. Andy Peck there, taking several bars at a time.
The next obstacle's the up and over. Pretty self-explanatory. Shouldn't slow these guys down a bit.
Bring it on, guys. Bring it on.
Don't go on the next obstacle. Stand by.
Coming up on the Island Hopper, it's a real test of balance when you have the weight of all that gear throwing you off. But the team doesn't have a problem here.
Time to hit the wall. It's a definite teamwork obstacle. You can see the guys helping each other over and holding each other's weapons.
Teamwork, teamwork. Let's go, King. Come on, you're good. Go. Hey, grab the gun. Give it to him. Go. All right. You got it. You're right. Stand by. All right. Yeah, way to go. Go, Joe. Teamwork. Good job.
The next one's called the vaults. These things are just high enough to be a pain to get over. Again, the weapons and the other gear can slow you down on this course, and all the gear has to make it to the finish line.
Go, Wilson. Go.
You can see everyone has their own technique for crossing these hurdles. There's Senior Master Sergeant Alan Parks, not competing in the event, but tagging along for the moral support of the team.
The team's making its way to the next obstacle. A little winded, it looks like, but still staying pretty strong, coming up on the low crawl. Always fun when it's muddy.
Good job, guys. Watch your weapons. Stay. Stay together.
Doing well, good job.
Looking good, looking good.
Keep going, guys, good job.
Good job. Wait on all of them.
All right, good job. Keep it going now.
Wait. Stay together. Wait on all of them. Get your breath.
Good job.
Almost. Jack, go. Stand up, get your air, guys.
There's Charles Kane. Looks like he's the last one through.
No, wait, there's someone else back there. Somebody got left behind. He'll catch up while these guys complete the final obstacle, the tough nut.
Here you go, come on. Way to go, guard, come on now. Come on, baby. All right. Looking good.
We're good.
This obstacle is harder than it looks. Mike Rukak is having trouble holding on to that saw.
Go. Those aren't our guns. Abuse the hell out of them. Let's move. Good job. Take his ABCs. Obvious pain.
Now we're on to the first basic skills test, the first aid station. They have a mannequin there and perform the kinds of tasks you might need in a combat situation.
Fold that up smaller. Fold it in like 2-inch strips.
Roll it up. We have to tourniquet it because it won't stop.
Go ahead.
Anybody check his stomach?
Don't lift it up too much.
Let's go, guys. 1 to 5.
Okay, open it up. Open it up. Get it over here.
Now they have to put the patient on the litter, being careful not to make his injuries any worse.
Slide it on. Careful of the legs, Andrew. Get that. Careful.
The other person hold him with one unit.
Get them on there, guys.
Come on, guys.
We're heading out when you get them on.
Get his neck.
Get ready to head out.
The team's on the move, running with the litter to the designated safe zone, which is 250 yards away. The strain on these guys is starting to show at this point.
A little bit further. Get your breathing. Pivot. Yeah, come down.
The patient's safe. Now it's time for the next core task.
At this station, the team has to work several land navigation problems. They split up to complete the tasks, one staying outside to work the GPS, and one going into the tent. Andy Peck calling off coordinates, while Joseph Studi plots them out on the map.
8165.
The land nav station complete, the team runs up the road to the next area. Nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare.
Fire team A, fire team B. Over at this
Again, splitting up to complete the task. One group takes a written test to check their knowledge, the other group practicing using the anti-nerve agent self-injectors.
Now it's time to sprint to the finish line, but it won't be that easy. Of course, the team's putting on their protective masks, and will have to leave them on while they complete the first course of pistol firing. With the sweat in their eyes, and now having to wear the masks, I don't know how they'll be able to shoot.
Squad leader, whenever you're ready.
Studi out front this time. There they go. Grabbing air protection, the firing has begun. Team members taking down the targets in each one of their lanes. There's the final target. It's down, stopping the clock and bringing an exciting conclusion to Phase 1 of the Warrior Challenge event. And when we come back, we'll see Phase 2, Individual Combat Handgun Marksmanship.
Stick around as TEC TV's coverage of Defender Challenge 2003 continues.
Defend America's skies from hostile intruders. Protect America's interests around the globe. The mission of the Air National Guard fighter remains the same. What's changing is the face of the person who flies it. The Air National Guard.
Ankle up, please.
Can you go to the satellite image, please? 33 degrees, 22.6 minutes.
Welcome back to TEC TV sports coverage of Defender Challenge 2003. After a grueling 1.5-mile run through an obstacle course, the Air National Guard team now has to compete in the combat handgun phase of the Warrior Challenge event.
Each individual has 2 minutes to try and hit 38 targets and will be judged on the number of targets hit. Penalty points will be removed for any hit on a target designated as friendly or non-hostile. The team with the highest total score will win the handgun event. The scores from this event will be added to the combat weapons event to determine the winner of the Coleman Cup.
Now let's head out to the range for highlights of Phase 2 of the Warrior Challenge event, Combat Handgun. First up, we have Senior Airman Dan Wilson out of Springfield, Ohio. Good solid hits on those metal targets.
Keep it pointed downrange when you're running.
Got to keep the muzzle of the weapon pointed downrange at all times during competition. Good safety tip there.
There you go. Come on, baby.
Nice shot on the drop-down target. These others are spring-loaded, showing pictures of both good guys and bad guys. You have to decide which ones to shoot. Combat reload.
Watch Wilson on this set of targets. Fast and accurate. Wouldn't want this guy mad at you.
Definitely a crowd pleaser there. Another fall-down target followed by a second set of spring-loaded targets. He's really racking up the points now.
There's the ceasefire. Senior Airman Daniel Wilson with a raw score of 295 and a normalized score of 89.52, putting him in 9th place in the overall combat handgun standings.
Next, we have Staff Sergeant Jim McIsaac from Scott Air Force Base, Illinois, also nailing the initial targets. Moving tactically. He's trying to avoid being hit. I don't know if you can see it or not, but this range is equipped with shoot-back system. It shoots jelly bean-sized rubber things at you, which can sting and, of course, break your concentration in a competition like this.
Who knew these things could shoot back, huh? McIsaac, having a little difficulty with that drop-down target, reloads.
And he's out of ammo and out of time. Staff Sergeant Jim McIsaac with a raw score of 270 and a normalized score of 85.48. That puts him at number 17 in the overall standings.
The pouring rain hasn't put a damper on this guy's technique. Check out Staff Sergeant Jason Studi as he blows through this course of fire.
Wow, awesome technique on those steel targets. A little jam after the reload. There, seems to be working now.
An enthusiastic team greeting as Staff Sergeant Jason Studi picks up an impressive raw score of 330 with a normalized score of 95.16. That puts him in third place overall in the individual handgun standings.
And here are the scores for the team members in the individual combat handgun rankings. The Air Guards team overall score in the combat handgun phase will play a big part in the scoring of the Warrior Challenge event. And with a raw score of 352.36 and a normalized score of 75.67, that will put them in fourth place for the team handgun portion of the Warrior Challenge event.
That's some mighty fancy shooting from the Air National Guard team. And when we return, the second event in Defender Challenge 2003, the combat weapons competition.
Running and gunning in soggy San Antonio. Stick around.
Looking for a part-time job that'll help pay for college? Consider one that can do that and a lot more. The Air National Guard. We've got the Montgomery GI Bill and a special cash bonus that can help get you through college. And training that can put you on course for an impressive full-time job. The Air National Guard. It's money for college and fuel for your future. Call 1-800-2GO-ANG.
Jay Latham has a full-time job. But today, his part-time job will take him into the eye of a hurricane. Being a hurricane hunter may be a part-time job, but it's a full-time experience. And just one of many exciting careers in the Air Force Reserve.
It's beautiful, beautiful sight from here.
Call 1-800-257-1212. Air Force Reserve. Above and beyond.
Welcome back to Defender Challenge 2003. We're getting ready for the combat weapons event, one that the Air National Guard team has trained for heavily. This event is both an individual and squad competition.
That's right, Terry. The team score for the combat weapons event will be derived from the total number of targets hit by all weapons in the team's arsenal. The team's final score will be combined with their score from the team's handgun event to determine who will win the Coleman Cup.
The range is huge, and some of the targets are as far away as 500 meters. Penalty points will be deducted for unsafe actions or non-tactical movement during the competition.
So let's head out to the range outside of San Antonio, Texas, where a cold drizzle is falling over the combat weapons event. Here comes the deuce and a half carrying the Air National Guard team. The team will deploy from here and run the 150-yard trail to the briefing tent.
Looks like they're having some trouble getting out of the truck there. Probably just being cautious. Wouldn't want anyone to twist an ankle right at the beginning of the competition.
Definitely not. They've learned their lessons in training about injuries. I'm sure they wouldn't want to lose anyone else. Going inside the tent now.
The team will disassemble their weapons here, and once they get the briefing, they'll put them back together. This will show the team's familiarity with their weapons, and hopefully, they'll work when the team gets to the firing line.
An ammunition check will be conducted. While low crawling, use proper cradle technique to protect your weapon and maintain safety.
Looks like the team is just about ready to head out to the firing range. Again, we'll have to run along the trail and move tactically when the time comes. There they are, cresting the hill, but it looks like there's some confusion out there, Terry.
Team leader Mike Rukakis getting direction from the range official and pointing his troops in the right direction. They're getting real close to the firing line now.
Get on line. Go to your point. Go to your point.
Sounds like incoming machine gun fire, Tim.
The team had better get down and low crawl now. A lovely day for it, too. All movement in the combat weapons event has to be tactical, or they'll lose points.
Go with it.
Looks like somebody's having some problems. A range official going over to check things out.
Stand by. All right. Take your time. It's all right.
240 gunner Dennis Callan having trouble with his mask there.
Take your time.
The shooting, stop, get up, move, run.
Now they're up and running towards the firing line, getting into their firing positions. When everybody's in position, they'll be able to take off their masks. Range officials giving the all-clear signal, which should be a big relief for the team.
Take off your gas mask, security, get your earplugs on.
Ready. Point one, are you ready? Ready.
Engage targets as they appear.
Engage your targets as they appear. Engage your targets as they appear. All right, guys, knock them down.
Once the line is ready, the range officials will give the order to fire. And there they go. Here's Senior Airman Robert Collins on the M249 squad automatic weapon. At 700 to 1,000 rounds per minute, that's a lot of lead going down range.
Get some, Collins. A spectacular display of firepower here at the range today, and deadly accurate. These are pop-up targets, so the shooters never know where they'll appear. Most of the M4 gunners you see here have the M68 close combat optic sight on their weapons.
Some M240B action going on here. It's the new replacement for the old M60 machine gun, and this is the first time the Air Force members have used it in competition.
Ceasefire! It looks like that's it for the range portion of this event. All the competitors stowing their gear. And while the range officials tally up the number of holes in the targets, let's head out to the grenade launcher range for highlights of the M203 Grenadier event.
Here's Staff Sergeant Jim McIsaac sighting in his M203. As they get started here, you can see each of the three Grenadiers has a partner looking downrange who helps them to hone in on the target. The assistant Grenadier also helps to reload after every round.
The competitors moved quickly between 3 different firing positions during the event, without pausing to take a breath.
205. 205 are way short. Go 245.
Calling out distances to each other, the Grenadiers hope to improve their accuracy. The M203 is a difficult weapon to maintain proficiency on if you don't get a chance to shoot it that often.
And most Guard units don't have ranges like this at home.
Fire complete.
And as the Grenadiers finish up, let's take a look at how the Air National Guard team did on the combat weapons event. The Air Guard's overall combat rifle standing, 8th place with a raw score of 207 and a normalized score of 61.11. A respectable finish in our second event of the Defender Challenge.
Coming up, the premier event in Defender Challenge 2003, the Sadler Cup competition. We'll be right back, so stick around.
Pride, when your accomplishments exceed your expectations. Accomplishments, contributing beyond yourself. Camaraderie, proudly serving with others while achieving common goals. Prior military service or not, make your time count and contribute to your community and country. Join the Air National Guard today and fuel your future. Call 1-800-2GO-ANG.
We're back with the TEC TV's coverage of the final event in Defender Challenge 2003, the Sadler Cup. The Sadler Cup has been called the premier event of Defender Challenge. The Air National Guard Security Forces team will have to call on all their skills to complete this mission.
To prepare for this mission, the team went to the Security Forces Battle Lab at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. At this state-of-the-art facility, they were able to do a virtual walkthrough of the Sadler Cup area. Using video game technology, the Battle Lab recreated the buildings and surrounding area in which the team will be competing. As they walked through the buildings, the team drew maps that will allow them to develop a strategy to successfully complete the mission and hopefully win the Sadler Cup event.
To make the training more realistic, the Defender Challenge planners have developed a scenario involving a fictitious country in Central Africa called Chango. The team will have to take down a group of rebels who have gotten their hands on a handheld anti-aircraft missile known as the Man-Pad. For more background on the Sadler Cup scenario, let's go to Wing Commander Philip Day as he briefs Colonel McGinley, the Director of Air Guard Security Forces.
Chango is a resource-rich but industrially and economically very depressed country in Central Africa. Chango has been in the grip of a civil war since 1994, when the Army for Separatist Forces Central, the AFSFC, have been trying to wrest power from the president. As a result of this protracted civil war, the country is a humanitarian disaster area, and the United Nations are now flying food and relief supplies into Chango Airfield. There is an aircraft inbound to Chango Airfield. It is low on fuel, it has mechanical problems, it has no option to divert anywhere else. It is coming in. The task of your team, sir, will be to neutralize that Man-Pad threat.
A very realistic scenario for our security forces team, and the realism will be enhanced through the improved Miles gear they'll be using. The Miles lasers are attached to their weapons, and the sensors on their gear will set off a loud beep if one of the team members is shot. There goes one of the rebels taking the Man-Pad into one of the buildings. So let's go now to the Sadler Cup event.
We have one of our videographers embedded with Bravo team, approaching the village in their Humvee.
Guy just got shot.
And they're under attack. The rebel opposition forces opening up on them. There's a guy on the roof with an M60 just blazing away.
There are civilians running around, screaming, mass chaos. Very realistic. Bravo fire team maneuvering through the woods to try and get closer to the building.
We go up there.
Let me get on that side.
More maneuvering by Andy Peck and Bravo team. There's Senior Airman Collins providing cover with his saw. There are civilians heading into the building where the bad guys are. That will definitely complicate things for the team.
Studi on the move, getting across the street next to the building. Other team members closing in on the rebels. There's team leader Mike Ricaucus, and it looks like Collins is down. Game over for Senior Airman Robert Collins.
Peck and Bravo team coming up to the back of the building.
I got you covered.
There goes Staff Sergeant Studi, headed into the building. There's a shot, and Studi is down.
Another one bites the dust. Mike Ricaucus talking with his team in headquarters. Every team member is equipped with a personal roll radio. Lots of cutting-edge technology here at Defender Challenge.
Andy Peck already inside, getting help from one of the team members. More gunshots as Joseph Mays and Jim McIsaac make their way up to the building.
We need to go in. Clear. Come on, Kane. Go.
Looks like they started to clear the building.
He's dead.
There's Charles Kane joining Peck. Mays and McIsaac rounding a corner.
Thank guys.
Sounds like hysterical civilians in that room.
Ma'am, I need you to calm down.
The team trying to avoid any unnecessary casualties.
Good. Thanks. Ready?
The team clearing the next room, keeping the team leader informed.
Roger. Be advised, we have one enemy down.
Looks like they've taken down one of the opposing forces. Now it's time to clear the roof and neutralize the man-pad threat.
Clear. Go up.
Roof is clear, building's clear.
McIsaac checking the enemy bodies for intel. There's some commotion down on the street.
Stay down, sir. Stay down. Stay down.
Looks like civilians. The team being cautious, but nobody's firing or overreacting. The civilian vehicle is clearing the area, and it looks like the exercise is over. The man-pad threat has been neutralized. No civilian casualties. A successful mission by the Air National Guard team.
Now let's see how they did. With a raw score of 607 and normalized score of 91.78, the Air National Guard team takes 4th place in the Sadler Cup event. And when we come back, we'll see the final scores and highlights from the closing ceremonies.
Find out who will take home the gold for Defender Challenge 2003. Stay with us.
Well, welcome back, and thanks for joining us for TEC TV's coverage of Defender Challenge 2003. It's been an exciting competition for the Air National Guard team, and they've done incredibly well in each of the 3 events. The way these events are scored gives the competitors a lot of chances for awards.
Indeed, Tim. Let's look at some of the scores and awards our guys are taking home from this competition. Our M249 automatic riflemen did well for themselves. Senior Airman Daniel Wilson had a raw score of 72 and a normalized score of 87.06, putting him in 5th place. Senior Airman Robert Collins had a raw score of 53 and a normalized score of 75.88. His ranking is 12th overall.
The M240 machine gunners, Staff Sergeant Jim McIsaac and Technical Sergeant Dennis Callan, both had a raw score of 20 and a normalized score of 52.06.
The Air Guard's M203 Grenadiers were Staff Sergeant Joseph Mays, Staff Sergeant Jim McIsaac, and Staff Sergeant Jason Studi. Mays had a raw score of 20 with a normalized score of 64.3, placing him 15th overall. McIsaac had a raw score of 10 with a normalized score of 57.1, putting him in 21st place. Studi's raw score was 0 with a normalized score of 50.
The team's M4 designated marksman was Staff Sergeant Charles Kane. He came in 7th overall with a raw score of 33 and a normalized score of 68.6.
Other rankings for M4 riflemen included Master Sergeant Mike Rukakis, who came in 22nd overall, Technical Sergeant Robert Sutton in 26th place, Staff Sergeant Joseph Studi in 35th place, Staff Sergeant Joseph Mays in 48th, and Technical Sergeant Andy Peck coming in 57th overall.
The Guard team had 3 guys placing in the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force's Ultimate Warrior Award. Staff Sergeant Jason Studi came in 2nd place with a grand point total of over 132. Team leader Mike Rukakis came in 5th place with a score of over 129. And Senior Airman Daniel Wilson came in right behind Rukakis in 6th place. His score was over 128 points.
And down in San Antonio, Secretary of the Air Force James Roche and the Air Force Chief of Staff General John Jumper were both on hand to give out the awards for Defender Challenge. One of the big surprises for the day came during the announcement for the winners of the Warrior Challenge event.
In 3rd place, with a score of 97.85, the defenders from the Air National Guard.
A big victory for the Guard team. You recall the Warrior Challenge event was a real test of endurance for these guys, and we were thrilled to see them placed among the winners. The defenders from Air Mobility Command came in 2nd, and the Air Education and Training Command took 1st place in the Warrior Challenge.
But the biggest thrill of the day came during the announcement of the overall Defender Challenge winners.
Our final presentation is the Defender Challenge Champion Award, recognizing the overall team champion. In 3rd place, with a score of 292.8, the defenders from the Air National Guard.
An exceptional performance from the Air National Guard team. The Royal Air Force team took 2nd place, and the defenders from the Department of Energy took 1st place overall.
The Department of Energy team was tough to beat. A lot of those guys had perfect scores in marksmanship, and of course the Royal Air Force sent their elite security forces for this competition. But the Air Guard's 3rd place ranking makes them the highest scoring Air Force team in this year's Defender Challenge, and that definitely gives them some bragging rights.
Outstanding, Tim. Colonel McGinley must be proud. An exciting conclusion to an exciting week of competition. That's all the time we have. We hope you've enjoyed TEC TV's coverage of Defender Challenge 2003. Thanks for watching.
So long, everybody.